You have in Israel here so many French immigrants from France, such as yourself. How would you characterize the Israeli mass media?
Well, Israeli mass media is leaning to the left, like everywhere else. They are not the only one. You have right-wing media like Israel Hayom, who became the first newspaper in terms of circulation in the whole country. And you have a few websites who are more conservative, and you have a few newspapers like the Jerusalem Post who are more leaning to center-right. That's one thing. But the media in general are leaning on the left. But there is something interesting, is that the Israeli people, the public, yes, didn't lose its common sense. They vote to the right. They don't buy the bias. So that's interesting. And you have the same in the States. You know, with 90% negative coverage of Trump,
The Trump campaign?
yeah, he was elected. So people don't buy it. But in France, in Europe, I follow the news in Europe and in England and a little bit in Germany. It doesn't work like that. People don't make enough distance with what they read on the news.
So would you suggest to the public who's watching the news that they aren't getting a fair, accurate representation of the world?
100%. 100%.
Percent not.
100% not, exactly. You cannot get what's going on watching the news. It's not possible. It does not exist at all. And to tell you the truth, if you want the news, if you want to know what's going on, you can. But unfortunately, it takes some work. You have to cross-reference everything. And that takes time, and people don't have time for that.
So people wind up being forced to go to news websites which reflect their own bias or their own affinity, and they don't wind up getting a true other perspective.
Well, first of all, people like this type of influence. They like to have a confirmation of what they believe, because that tells them that what they believe is right. So that's a natural tendency on all the sides. That's one thing. Now, on the other side, what are they left of? What is the choice? Either left-wing or sometimes extreme left-wing liberal media, which is mainstream now, which is the TV, radio, and the main newspaper, where they know they cannot get the information, or the internet, where they can find things that they trust more, and that also matches common sense. And common sense has no political view, has no political agenda, you know. So when you read something that looks right, that sounds right, that talks to your common sense, after you heard the opposite in the news, then you tend to understand how it works.
How do French people here, do they get a good representation of the situation which affects them, French Israelis, from your website called
Dreux Info? Yeah, well, yeah, because Dreux Info, it's not my website. I write for them in French, and it's written in French. It covers, I believe, it's one of the few French-speaking websites that covers the Middle East and the war with the Arabs honestly, and gives all the information. You know, the information are not to be found anywhere in French. 100% of the French media are anti-Israel, are pro-Palestinian. Can you believe it? 100%. You cannot find one mainstream newspaper or radio or TV which is even balanced about the conflict. Doesn't exist. So the French Israeli who lives here and they follow the news from France 2 or BFM or the other, they know that what they see in the street doesn't match what they hear in the news, so they go somewhere else.
And if people, let's say in Italy or around the EU, are interested in getting a story about, from a French writer on what the problem of immigration into the EU is, maybe your site is one of the few that they can rely on. Can they get it translated through Google Translate?
They could. Yeah, they could. Would they do it? I don't know. But because first they have to know about it. They have to say, oh, we want to know what Drosanfo says about it. But you have to know that Drosanfo exists.